Hello everybody, this is Lara with your once or twice, hopefully next week, twice a week, this week, once a week, update for Bitcoin and Solana. Bitcoin first, technicals only. If you want Elliott Wave for Bitcoin, I do update that every Monday on my website, Pure Elliott Wave. Just technicals here for the YouTube channel. Bitcoin has broken out to new all-time highs last week. Last week completes an increase in upward movement with push from volume and an increase in range. Now that this bear market and this consolidation is complete, energy has been released to the upside exactly as expected following an upward breakout, and I expect obviously the next bullish run is underway. The only question is when and where is it going to end. I do not expect any deep pullbacks. I do not expect support at 73,800 to be tested at this stage. I expect an increase in upward momentum. We're going to have pauses along the way, but I'm not expecting any real bearish movement for quite some time now, probably months. The last completed upward week, last week, has a really strong increase in volume, a huge increase in volume. That volume strongly supports upward movement. This strongly suggests that this upward movement is not done yet. On balance, volume is making new highs with price. ADX at the weekly time frame tells us yes, there is an upward trend in a relatively early stage. There is a very long way to go before at the weekly time frame the trend reaches extreme. This is an early stage in the upward trend. Because there is no pivot developed on price or RSI, I will not identify divergence with these highs back here, and it's best to look to pivots that are closer together rather than this far apart. To look toward pivots that are further apart, it's best to look at a higher time frame. So there's no divergence yet to identify between price and RSI. RSI is only just entering overbought. There's quite a long way to go before this trend reaches as extreme as it can get and RSI reaches as extreme overbought as it can get. It can reach deeply overbought, it can remain there quite a while, and then it can exhibit bearish divergence before the bull market run comes to an end. RSI does tend to reach overbought relatively early on in a bull market run, and that's what it's done here. So I still expect we're relatively early on in this bull market run. Likewise, money flow is neutral. This is not overbought. Quite a ways to go before this one gets extreme. ATR is showing an increase now as price has broken out to new all-time highs and continued on up. Volatility favors the upside. Looking at the daily time frame, price is on a steady rise with pauses along the way. Don't expect it to move in a straight line yet. Toward the end of this bullish run, price could at the daily time frame move in a straight line. Sometimes it does that when it has those vertical upward movements, but so far we're seeing the last 1, 2, 3 and now 4 sessions in a row with increasing range. The real bodies of these candlesticks are getting bigger. This is an indication of potentially the early phase of an exponential growth curve, which Bitcoin does tend to exhibit in its bullish runs. This is a really bullish look for Bitcoin, and it still looks like it's relatively early on in this bullish run. For the short term, for the last completed session, we have a little bit of an increase in volume. Volume was strongly pushing price higher after energy was released, after the breakout to new all-time highs. We had a little bit of a pause to relieve very short-term extreme conditions, and now volume is starting to increase again. ADX at the daily time frame is now very extreme. It's above 45 and above both DX lines, but it can get more extreme than this. We should probably adjust the 45 limit for very extreme for ADX to Bitcoin to more like 50 or even maybe 55. It can get to above 65, it can get up to 70 before the upward trend is likely to be interrupted by a more reasonable pause or pullback. Now at the daily time frame, extreme ADX and bearish divergence with price and money flow and price and RSI doesn't necessarily mean that the bull market run is over. Once we see extreme conditions at the daily time frame, we'd just be looking at an interruption to the bull market run. We need to wait for extreme conditions at the weekly time frame before we can expect that the bull market run may be over. RSI is overbought, reasonably overbought at the daily time frame. I'm not going to identify any divergence because there's no pivot developed on RSI or price. Likewise, money flow is just again entering overbought. Quite a ways to go before this can get further extreme, and there's no pivot developed, so no divergence. ATR showing overall a steady increase as price rises. That's very good to see. Volatility favours the upside for Bitcoin. Elliott Wave and then technicals for Solana. I'm going to zoom out for Solana on the weekly time frame to look at the Elliott Wave count from the beginning to the high in November 2021. Let's just snap that in there. Up to that high, which was at 258.9113. I see a 5-wave impulse. I'll label that cycle wave 1. From that high, the bear market down to December 2022 fits as a double zigzag. I'll label that cycle wave 2. So I have 1, 2, 3 to complete, and then 4, and then 5. When 4 arrives, it may not move into wave 1 price territory. We're still just within wave 1 price territory. The high so far is 258.8037. The previous all-time high was 258.9113. Solana is so close to breaking out to new all-time highs. If it can close to a new all-time high on an upward session with support from volume, that is, volume on that session is an increase beyond the previous session immediately prior, then we would have a classic technical upward breakout with support from volume. We could have confidence in that. I expect a breakout imminently to a new all-time high, a backtest of support. We may see that before price moves up and away. My target for Solana for cycle 3 is 2887. That's where cycle 3 would reach 11.09 times the length of cycle 1. That's an extreme Fibonacci ratio. I'm going to use it in this instance because cryptocurrencies exhibit extreme volatility. So you have to use, with higher volatility markets, higher Fibonacci ratios for your target calculation. Cycle wave 3 may only subdivide as an impulse. That will be labelled primary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Primary 4 is complete, finding support almost absolutely perfectly at the lower edge of this Elliott channel. I've drawn this channel, which is on a semi-log scale, from the end of 1 to 3 with a parallel copy at the end of 2. It didn't perfectly show where subsequent candlesticks found support at the weekly time frame. That's okay. It perfectly showed where primary 4 found support, and prices remained above that point since. Within primary 5, no second wave correction. They moved beyond its start below 111.4255. Now here's an Elliott Wave rule you can use to guide your investing or trading. A third wave must move beyond the end of the first wave, and it must move far enough beyond the end of the first wave to allow the fourth wave to unfold and remain above first wave price territory. Using that rule, you can understand that if you enter anything within a first wave price territory, you can hold it to get the gains of the third wave. You can sit out and ride out the fourth wave so that you also get the gains of the fifth wave. Now the fifth wave is really important because the fifth wave for cryptocurrencies, similar to commodities with extreme volatility, it's the fifth wave that most often, not always, but most often is the longest and strongest portion of the impulse. This is where you will get vertical upward movement covering the greatest distance in price in the shortest amount of time. This is where the greatest profit potential often lies, not always, most often. So using that rule, if you enter anything in first wave price territory, you can hold on and remain profitable and positive to get the gains of the fifth wave. And that's what I'm going to do for my investment with Solana. I'm going to hold on for that fifth wave. Let's take a look at the daily time frame. We're going to look from the end of primary 4 and see how primary 5 might be beginning. Here's the end of primary 4 and the start of primary 5, subdividing as an impulse with intermediate waves 1 and 2 complete. Now looking for intermediate wave 3, 4 and 5 to complete cycle wave 3. Intermediate 3 may only subdivide as an impulse, so must minor 3 and minute 3. The middle portion may have passed. Now I know that I've got the middle portion of primary wave 5 passing back down here, while primary 5 and cycle 3 are still within cycle 1 price territory. That's okay, and that's kind of what I would expect. If we're going to see it's the fifth waves, minute 5 but more likely minor 5 and most likely intermediate 5 are going to be the longest, strongest portions of the end of cycle wave 3. I expect cycle wave 3 to end with a huge blow off top, vertical upward movement for 2 to 5 weeks with a huge increase in momentum and range and support from volume. Minor 3 with minute 1, 2, 3, 4, and now minute wave 5 underway with minuet 1, 2, 3, 4. May not move into one price territory below 222.6577. Price should remain above that point if this Elliott Wave count is correct. Now moving up toward the end of minor 3. When that's complete, and it could be complete any day, so I probably actually technically should move the invalidation point, sorry about that, down to here, 161.6622. It's possible intermediate 3 could be complete any day now, and we could be looking for a very short-term correction of maybe 2 to 3 sessions for minor wave 4, which may not move into minor wave 1 price territory. Now here's another thing about how I explained you can use that Elliott Wave rule that 3 must move beyond the end of 1 and the other rule 4 may not overlap 1. Here's another thing about that. If you hold on to get the gains of the third wave and you hold on and you ride out that fourth wave pullback so that you know you're well positioned for the fifth wave, the fourth wave usually has a really big gap between the lows of the fourth wave and the highs of the first wave. So if you've entered in first wave price territory, you hold out for the second wave, you get those gains of the third wave, and then you ride out that pullback for the fourth wave, you should still remain really nicely profitable if you entered back down here. So eventually when minor 4 arrives, I don't expect it to get anywhere near minor wave 1 price territory, and it may end within the fourth wave of 1 lesser degree, within minute wave 4, but it probably won't even be that low. It might end within the fourth wave of 2 lesser degrees, minuet wave 4 down here. Just a short, shallow, brief interruption to this overall upward trend is what I'm expecting for minor 4 to come. Last week I said I wanted to try and figure out how to use Fibonacci number sequence to apply that to the duration of these Elliott waves to try and find out when cycle wave 3 may end for Solana. I've got this target using Fibonacci ratio 11.09. That's the where it may end, but when. It's just not going to be that easy for Solana. Bitcoin is currently beautifully exhibiting Fibonacci durations. It's just an absolute joy to analyze using Elliott Wave at the moment. I'm really enjoying that one. But Solana, probably because the volume isn't as large, isn't exhibiting the same kind of numbers. If we look back at cycle wave 1, that lasted 76 weeks. That's not a Fibonacci number, not even close. Cycle wave 2 lasted 59, 4 more than a Fibonacci 55, so kind of close. Looking at the waves within cycle wave 1, primary wave 1, 16, 3 more than a Fibonacci 13, primary wave 2, 14, 1 more than a Fibonacci 13, primary 3, Fibonacci 21, primary 4, 9, 1 more than a Fibonacci 8, and primary 5, 16, 3 more than a Fibonacci 13. So within up to 2 or 3 either side of those numbers, yeah, it might do that somewhat reliably. Looking at what we've got so far within cycle 3, primary 1, Fibonacci 5, primary 2, 19, 2 short of a Fibonacci 21, primary 3, 40, a little bit too far off a Fibonacci 34 to say that, and not 55 either. So too far off either of those numbers to say that it exhibits close to a Fibonacci number. Primary 420, very close to a Fibonacci 21. But cycle wave 3 has to move beyond the end of cycle 1. It has to move far enough above the end of cycle 1 to allow room for 4 to unfold and remain above wave 1 price territory, which means cycle 3's got a long way to go in terms of price distance. If my wave count here is wrong, it could be that primary 3 is incomplete and I need to move everything in here down 1 degree. I'll leave it for here now, because I think that has the best fit for now. What that means is I'm expecting primary 5 to be extended in price and time. So possibly a Fibonacci 34 weeks in total for primary 5. If it lasts a Fibonacci 34 weeks, that means it's got 19 more weeks to go, which means it's got just under 5 months left before it reaches the end of cycle wave 3. So December, January, February, March, April. So maybe the end of April, early May next year. That would be my rough scribble on the back of an envelope kind of estimation. I wouldn't put too much weight on that, but I think it might be within the ballpark, 1 or 2 months either side of that estimation. Pretty confident it should end next year, sometime around March, April, May possibly. That would be my estimation for cycle wave 3. Technicals on the daily really quickly for Solana. Price is increasing, obviously, finding resistance here at previous all-time highs, about 258. There should be really strong resistance there. I would not be surprised to see a little pullback, a little pause before it gathers the strength to break through to new all-time highs, move up and away, back test of support before moving up and away. That'd be pretty typical price behavior. However, cryptocurrencies don't always have those back tests of support. Sometimes after they break out, they just rocket on up. These markets have extreme volatility. Not seeing a huge push in volume recently for Solana, which is a little bit surprising. We might not see that until it breaks out to new all-time highs, and that might generate some real interest. But so far, for the short term, it is upward volume that has the strongest sessions. So the volume profile is bullish. On balance volume is within a widening range, and there's no signal. We may not get a signal from this range because it's widening. ADX tells us there's an upward trend. It gave a really strong bullish signal back here on the 15th of October as ADX rose from below 15 and below both DX lines and gave us a really strong bullish signal telling us Solana was in an upward trend in an early stage. That upward trend is still intact according to ADX. And there's quite a long way to go before it reaches extreme danger territory. So this is a really, really bullish look from ADX at the daily time frame. RSI is overbought, but it can get deeply overbought and it can exhibit multiple bearish divergence at the daily time frame before the trend comes to an end. And I'll be looking at ADX and RSI together, not just in isolation, along with money flow as well. Money flow's got a way to go before it reaches overbought as well. ATR shows a strong, steady increase as price is rising. There's a little bit of push from volume, a strong increase in range. Price action is really, really bullish. I expect we might not see a big explosion until Solana's broken out to new all-time highs, and it's really, really close now. This is a very bullish look for Solana. That's it from me with a quick update for you today, and I hope you're all having a lovely week.